Currently, my area of research is in developing patient-derived models of liver cancer mainly. We've also got some funding to do triple-negative breast cancer. And we get consented patient tissue, we establish 3D cell models or organoids, we grow them in the dish, we bioprint them so we can recreate the microenvironment of those tumours, and we screen thousands of drugs to develop new therapeutics. Hi, I'm Dr Ben Dwyer. I am a Senior Research Fellow and Director of the Western Australian Organoid Innovation Hub here at the Curtin Medical Research Institute at Curtin University in Perth, Western Australia. I first started out of high school. I went to the WA Academy of Performing Arts as a classical pianist, and after a year there decided that perhaps science was my passion, so moved into undergraduate science. I met a really great professor, Professor George Yeo, who was involved in liver research, and that started my passion with the liver, which has continued to today, where we're looking at liver cancer organoids. Another change in career was, or turning point in my career was in 2014 when a professor from the University of Edinburgh came to Perth, Professor Stuart Forbes, and we decided that I would go up to Edinburgh and do a postdoc for a year. And I ended up staying for 6.5 years. That was a major turning point in my career. I got to work in a lab that works very closely with clinic, involved in clinical trials, working with cell manufacturing, and heavily in the commercial space as well. So that gave me some fantastic training in development of new therapeutics, clinical trials, patient interface. And then in 2020, we got a $10.8 million grant here in Perth from the Cancer Research Trust to start the Liver Cancer Collaborative, and I made a decision to come back to Perth to start the Organoid lab as part of the Liver Cancer Collaborative. So my journey has gone from being a musician to a scientist to working in the UK and now back in Perth. Currently, my area of research is in developing patient-derived models of liver cancer mainly. We've also got some funding to do triple-negative breast cancer. And we get consented patient tissue, we establish 3D cell models or organoids, we grow them in the dish, we bioprint them so we can recreate the microenvironment of those tumours, and we screen thousands of drugs to develop new therapeutics. We're also working in developing some immune-competent models to understand how the immune system interacts with these cancers. We do a lot of high-content imaging to use machine learning-based methods for drug development. We collaborate with local medchem companies with their therapeutics to try and repurpose drugs or develop new drugs for these cancers. Previously, I've been involved in a clinical trial of macrophage therapy for liver cirrhosis at the University of Edinburgh. Also in commercial development of that product, so developing methods to genetically engineer and cryopreserve those macrophages, which is now in clinical trial in a spinout company from the University of Edinburgh. And my time in Edinburgh, I was first exposed to cholangiocarcinoma research, which is a rare type of liver cancer that's exceptionally deadly. So I've had a special interest in cholangiocarcinoma research since 2014. I continue that here. We develop cholangiocarcinoma organoids, and I work very closely with an Australian-based charity, the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation Australia, to have a patient input and to kind of understand the patient journey and what patients need in terms of their treatment. We receive our tissue through the Perkins Cancer Biobank, which is situated at the Perkins Institute here in Perth. And they receive the patient tissue and pass this on to us to develop our cell models. This is a large collaborative between those hospitals, the Perkins Institute, UWA, and Curtin University as part of the Liver Cancer Collaborative. We still have pretty heavy collaboration with the University of Edinburgh and old colleagues at the University of Edinburgh around development of biomarkers for liver cancer. And some of the organisations that have funded our work are the Cancer Research Trust the Fiery Fund here, or the Future Health Research and Innovation Fund through the Western Australian State Government, which has funded a lot of our infrastructure here, and more recently a 3-year fellowship for myself. And in the UK, the AMMF, the cholangiocarcinoma charity, funded our work on the tweak FN14 signalling pathway in cholangiocarcinoma. I've always been a very curious person, so even as a young kid, my mum has a story of me finding a dead bird and wanting to take that home and put it on an ant's nest to study it. So I think I've always been naturally curious about processes of life and anatomy, and I've been able to continue that with my laboratory research as an adult. And on the other side of that, there's a real need for us to develop new therapeutics. So I've had a lot of interface with patients and people who need new therapeutics. So I think for me the passion comes from being naturally curious to understand processes and to apply that knowledge to help people. I think if what I can do can help patients live a better life or a longer life, then that's kind of where my passion is driven, to make human life better. I still play a little bit of music, so I play my guitar and like to do a bit of singing. I apply that sometimes to stand-up comedy, which I started performing during my PhD and have recently gotten back into in the last 6 months, so performing gigs around Perth and even interstate. And improv as well, so I really like to kind of act and form characters and bring some musicality to that. I enjoy cooking, so I make a lot of pasta and bread, particularly during the pandemic. When we were locked down in the UK, I got into the sourdough making like a lot of other people. And I like to exercise, so in Edinburgh I was doing a lot of running half marathons, and back here in Perth do a bit of cycling and running, and typically try and pair that with some sort of kind of charity fundraising and awareness raising, and more recently have been working with the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation and raising money for AMMF, the cholangiocarcinoma charity. So trying to, as well as keep fit, let people know about this particularly devastating disease.